Let's take a look at a Biosanctic Broodsurge Battleforce Big Box containing a brand new Blessed Benefictus. How does the Genestealer Cult launch box stack up by the numbers? Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today we're talking Genestealer Cults once more, and in this video I thought we'd take a look over the Biosanctic Broodsurge, the new Battleforce box set that's coming out for the worshippers of the Four-Armed Emperor. In the video let's talk about the launch, talk through each of the miniatures that are coming out in this, and then look at how it stacks up in terms of discount, points in the box, and overall unit mix. This Battleforce is the box set for the 10th edition Genestealer Cult Codex release, and it seems that in 10th edition that's just one of the ways that Games Workshop does these things now. The majority of codexes that have come out have both had a new combat patrol set, plus a limited time discount box like this, usually with a new character release thrown in to add a bit of interest, and then an overall discount on the kits contained. No idea whether it'll be the same story, with far too few of these produced for how many want them. I guess Genestealer Cults is a bit more of a niche army versus things like Orcs or Chaos Space Marines, though given past examples it certainly could be harder to get hold of than a lot of people might like. As it goes, I'd say the content of this box set is at least relatively well balanced. We've got some basic troops, some elite mutants and war machines, and a couple of characters, including the new Brain Boy. And apparently the vague theme of the box set is to be the Biosanctic Broodsurge, which will apparently be a new detachment coming out in the Genestealer Cult Codex, the theme of which is supposedly going to be a close combat themed force, lots of things helping out aberrants and pure strains tearing things up in melee apparently. The theme of these box sets doesn't always seem to match up perfectly with the detachment though. The Custodians Auric Champions one definitely didn't have that big an emphasis on characters. I think to most, regardless of any individual detachment, that might be kind of good or it might be kind of terrible. It's more a case of the units contained within and whether or not people like the overall deal. Based on the way that Games Workshop often do these things, I'd guess the release for the box set might be sometime in June. There's usually a bit of a lead time between the announcement of the box sets and them going on full sale. In their previous roadmaps, Games Workshop had said that the Sisters and the Genestealer Cult were both codexes billed for summer, and as for the Custodians and Orcs, there's a pretty reasonable chance they both come out on the same release weekend, much in the same way that Custodians and Orcs or Necrons and Admech did. Pricing for this one's yet to be determined, and genuinely could vary a fair bit, given Games Workshop price rises are apparently going to be a thing over the next few weeks, but I feel like the best estimate at time of recording is probably similar to the Chaos Space Marine characters with battle forces, and they were £140, $230 or €180, and that does seem to work out kind of well with the estimated discount that you'd get in this. Before we get stuck into the content of the box set, I'd just like to mention that this one's going to be the focus of the Warspets Tactics giveaway for July. I'm going to do this one similar to the way that I did the Custodians and Orcs one. 6 channel viewers will either get either the Sisters of Battle, Battleforce, the Army of Faith, or the Biosanctic Broodsurge that we're talking about in this video. As per usual, there's 2 different ways to enter, either supporting the channel on Patreon or entering via social media for free. I'll talk about that a bit more at the end of the video, so check back there if you'd like to have a bit more detail as to how to be in for this if you'd like to. Getting into the miniatures though, and let's start out with the new one in the Genestealer Cult Benefictus. This one looks like it's the only new model that's properly coming out with the Codex, though I guess we do also have the Genestealer Cult Brood Brothers set that's going to be dropping as a kill team upgrade sprue for the Cadians. I have a feeling that yet another Genestealer Cult character model maybe wasn't the thing that was in most demand for a Genestealer release. They already have a crazy abundance of them, but it looks like he's going to be yet another squad leader option, though at least with a kind of potentially interesting battlefield role, nice direct damage added to the units. Based on other Genestealer Cult character prices, maybe he could be somewhere around £22.50, €30 or $35 when sold individually. That'll be the same price as the Reductor's Saboteur, if you do want a big-brained human zoanthrope wandering around the board. The basic idea behind them is that much like Tyranid zoanthropes, you can basically project a Warp Lance beam of psychic energy that's a pretty potent anti-tank and monster type weapon, just destroying whatever is in its reach. The Benefictus will only reveal itself at the later stages of a cult uprising, given that there's no chance of it passing unnoticed amongst its human peers, unlike some of the other cultists. The model I think is going to appeal to some people a lot more than others. It's definitely kind of fun in a twisted alien cultist with a ridiculously enormous brain, but does also feel a bit silly as well. I have seen a few people say it almost looks a little bit like a kit bash. I think it walks the line between fun and silly kind of well though. I'm certainly not going to miss them on the battlefield, enormous great big zoanthrope-like head, a little mutant Genestealer Cult tail poking out the back of it, and of course an extra mutated limb carrying a totemic cult icon type staff into battle. In game they gave us a few hints that it's going to be a sort of big hitting anti-tank shot out of its psychic attack. Could be quite nice to have if you've got the character hidden behind the guard of a unit, as well as that it'll grant lethal hits to its unit apparently, so it'll be good for making neophytes or acolytes punch up against big tough stuff. And from the free text it sounded like there might be some sort of battle shock debuff against enemies that it hits with its psychic attack, though I guess we'll wait and see on that front. I guess for this one they're going for this one being more sort of a direct damage battle psyker, versus the mages maybe trying to do more subtle things with mass hypnosis or defense against enemy psychic attacks for his squad. Overall, as support characters rules go, it seems at least kind of interesting. Could be an interesting drop threat to add to a unit and hit things extra hard. Neophytes and acolytes often just want to deep strike onto the board and deal some huge damage. Though I guess we'll have to wait and see how the numbers stack up for this guy versus options like the Primus buffs and getting scary unit damage with full rerolls. Otherwise though, taking a look at the rest of the box, first up we've got 5 Aberrants for £27.50 or $45. Big hitting mutants with heavy power weapons. They're often used quite nicely with infiltrating in the index rules, usually accompanied by a character, making them all -1 to wounds, and putting them down somewhere threatening up the board. They're generally a unit that can take an enormous amount of punishment. They do add quite a lot of points to the box as well, as it's 180 points for 5. To lead them here, we've got the super mutant that is the Abominant, £19 or $33.50 from Games Workshop. He's the freakish chosen one of the Aberrants with an enormous power sledgehammer. I say currently he's pretty usable in game, giving them all sustained hits for a nice damage boost, plus his own big hitting attacks and the ability to regenerate on death. I feel like I've seen more people using the Biophagus for the choice of leader between the two at the moment though, with his anti-infantry things, and lethal hits to help them punch up against tough stuff a bit easier. I do think he's still very playable though. Next up we've got 10 rank and file neophytes, £32.50 or $55 from Games Workshop currently. They've generally been a useful unit for the cults ever since they came out. In 10th edition, big blocks of them dropping in with seismic cannons often do a whole load of work against any sort of mass enemy medium infantry, particularly with the other boosts that you can put on them. And when all of that comes with farming command points, having great objective control, and a good chance to get back into the game if they get destroyed with cold ambush, there's quite a lot to like about them, and kind of hard to have too many of. Next up we've got a squad of 10 pure strain Genestealers, £32.50 or $55. Always kind of nice to see a Genestealer Cults box with some actual Genestealers here, and these ones being redone recently in 10th edition for the Tyranids certainly doesn't hurt. A fair bit more dynamic and more nicely sculpted models than the ones were before. Good to have the apex predators of the Genestealer Cults looking good. In game I wouldn't say they're a central unit, but they definitely serve their purpose. Infiltrators with long charge distances can be quite nice against mauling lighter enemy infantry units. I guess there's always the possibility that in the codex there's a bit more to support cult melee choices. I feel like quite a lot of the current attachment is maybe a bit better for ranged things over close combat. Finally for the box set we've got 2 bigger models, 2 Goliaths that you can either build as Goliath truck transports or Goliath rock grinders with the great big drill dozer blades. These both I would have considered really quite overcosted previously. I feel like losing 20 odd points for each of them puts them in a much nicer place. The truck's handy enough for things starting on the board, and the rock grinder I feel is now a little bit more proportional, with it being at least somewhat easy to kill for a sort of battle tank equivalent, though it does have already quite a lot of threat if the opponent doesn't have enough things to muster on destroying it. Either way, handy enough to get units onto objectives, maybe starting on the board, as it usually makes sense not to have literally everything deep striking in. Putting that all together, and it means that the total cost of the kits here is £209 or $343, a little bit more than the Sister Battle equivalent of this Battleforce box set. And if it does indeed wind up being that price of £140, $230 or €180, it'd be around about 33% off. That exact percentage discount could definitely change a bit depending on a few things though, if the box set is either more expensive or cheaper than that estimate, or if Games Workshop's price rises come into effect in the meantime. Maybe the Battleforce still comes out at that price, but they raise the prices a bit on all the other kits that are contained within it. That could actually make the theoretical discount get a bit better, even if you're basically getting the same stuff and it's just due to Games Workshop increasing prices. As it goes though, if that does turn out to be correct, then 33% seems at least fairly middling for the Battle Forces. It's not super low, but it's also not one of the best ones either. And as I mentioned in a previous video earlier in the week, the Sisters of Battle one does look a little bit worse than this at around about 28%, but the difference isn't huge. For points in the box though, the difference between those two was really quite pronounced. At least for pre-codex points, you get 780 points in this box set here. It will vary a bit if you use the Goliaths as trucks or rock grinders. I assumed one of each, and I've guessed the Benedictus at around about 65 points. A few of the Genestealer Cult support characters are a bit less than that, but if it really does do proper anti-tank damage and give the squad lethal hits, I feel like it's probably going to be a little bit more than most. As that goes for Battleforce box sets, it's not one of the single best out there, but it's certainly not one of the worst. 3.4 points per dollar isn't too bad for Warhammer 40k. Pretty helpful for Genestealer Cults as well, as they generally tend to have values kind of low on that sort of ratio. It looks like it's going to be better than the new Combat Patrol at 3.4 versus 2.5. The old Combat Patrol was a bit better at 3.8 though. Overall, as 10th edition launch battle forces go, I feel like this one is an alright one. Certainly for newer players it seems hard to go too far wrong with. It's an okay unit mix and could pair pretty well with the new Combat Patrol, the one with the bikes and the Ridge Runner and the Jackal Alphas and plenty of Acolytes. There's no unit overlap between the two, and you could get at least a fairly well-rounded force between the pair of them. I say it maybe doesn't pair quite as well with those who already have plenty of Aberrants and Goliaths from previous copies of the Combat Patrol sets. I feel like if you were collecting Genestealer Cults in a big way prior to 10th edition, there's a good chance that you've got one or two copies of the Combat Patrol, meaning that you might already have enough Goliaths to suit your needs, and the same for Aberrants. If so, it might be a little bit more passable. I suppose having the Goliath being able to be assembled as either trucks or rock grinders might add a little bit more value to having multiple of them than there would otherwise be. It'd be kind of cool if they do manage to make Genestealer Cult playable as a sort of mechanized force in the new codex. I feel like that's definitely one way that they could play that just isn't really very strong right now. Overall though, online reaction seems to be at least fairly good about them. As GW battle forces go, it's an okay model mix, not too much of a weird slant like the Sisters of Battle 1 to all jump infantry, a pretty reasonable amount of points in the box, again far better than the Sisters there. At least a somewhat fairly standard discount for Games Workshop big boxes, even if it's not one of the most exciting deals that they've ever offered at around 33%. All this might be a little bit theoretical if they make really tiny numbers of them though. Fingers crossed they have enough out there to actually get them to people who want them, though certainly a bit of a lack of supply of things like the Chaos Battle Forces. In any case, looking forward to seeing your guys' takes on this down in the comments below. Do you think it's a good deal or not? And do you think it's actually something that you'd be interested in for your specific collection? Or is the unit mix a bit wrong? Finally, I'd just like to swing back to talk about that giveaway. As mentioned, the July Auspex Tactics giveaway will be for this plus the Sisters of Battle Army of Faith. Basically 6 different channel viewers will get the chance to have one of these. You can either pick the Sisters box with the Seraphim and Zephyrim and the Exorcist, or this Biosanctic Broodsurge of the Genestealer Cult. As per normal for the channel giveaways, there's 2 equal ways to enter, links down in the video description, either supporting the channel via Patreon or supporting via social media completely for free. For the Patreon entry, it can be as little as you want each month. It is the thing that allows me to make these videos as my main full-time thing, and that gets you automatic entry into each giveaway each month. There'll be similar stuff coming. I use the list of active patrons and export it for the random number generator. Otherwise, if you'd like to support the channel via social media and enter for free, you can do so by doing these 3 actions: subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the channel Facebook page, again links down in the video description, and then to finally enter the draw on Facebook. A post appears on the 1st of July. It appears at midnight UK time and is active for 24 hours after that. Reply to that post with a picture of any 40k miniature or imagery, along with your name and the date handwritten within the same photo, the last bit just to deter Facebook bots and spammers and make sure prizes go to real people. Then, after that 24 hours is up, I do the draw, plugging all the entries into a random number generator to pick out 6 winners. Everyone gets just 1 entry. I'll announce those winners on the channel update video on the 4th of July, ask people which box they'd want, and then post them out to you once the orders come in from Games Workshop and elsewhere. Obviously, at time of recording, we don't know exactly when they're going to come out. I suspect sometime in June, though it could be a little bit later. As ever, there'll be further similar giveaways to this each and every month. There's still a June one to come yet. That one will be for 2 winners, each getting a Warhound Titan, customised with the weapons of their choice. And that one has the exact same rules as this, but for June, not July. In any case, if you want to check out either the Patreon or the Facebook page, they're both links down in the video description. In any case, let me know your thoughts on the Genestealer Cult Big Box. How would you rate it, and how does it compare with the previous Combat Patrol and the new Combat Patrol box set? Look forward to hearing your ideas down in the comments. If you'd like to see more like this, then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly be covering any more news that we get for the Genestealer Cults, including doing a full review of the Codex when it's out. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep all of these coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.